I don't even know I'm signed to a record label with an artist and repertoire. Cause nobody in CHH is a superstar.
He may not be a superstar yet, but he is definitely on his way. Singer Christon Gray just released his solo album under Collision Records titled School of Roses. And get this, his album shot to the top of the charts on iTunes, #1 for R&B albums and #1 overall. The debut also landed him in the top 10 on the Billboard charts, opening at #9 with Hot Shot debut honors. And he did it all while living right here in Columbus. The day after his album released, I sat down with Christon to talk about his achievement. What was that moment like when your album was on iTunes and you saw it for the very first time?
So this was yesterday. This was March 25th. So March 24th, around 8 p.m., I'm kind of like, all right, there's this gap of time, where I have to wait to see the reaction. But the pre-orders were doing really well, so it was already at #3 in R&B. So I went to sleep early. I went to sleep like 10 o'clock, and then I woke up. I just woke up at like 4 a.m. and I was like, okay, I need to see what's going on. Looked online, looked on Twitter. Twitter was blowing up. All social media was blowing up, and yesterday felt pretty surreal. I mean, it was like, I don't know. I just felt like it was something out of a movie. It was crazy. I couldn't keep up with it. So.
Were you like jumping up and down, or were you just like kind of chilled out?
I was trying to be reserved like I am right now, but really like, inside I'm bursting right now and I can't show it. So it was the same thing. I think I played it off really well, like I think I'm doing now. So I played it off until I got in the car. Then I got in the car and like rolled the windows down, and every red light I would look at people like, yeah, are you listening to this right now? Because it's #1 on the charts. Right?
You're from Columbus, born and raised here, but you came out with an album that went to the top of the charts on iTunes. But you did it from here in Columbus. How'd you do it?
Well, Columbus has a lot of talent. I mean, everybody who's here knows that. I don't know, I think we do an interesting job of exposing that talent. There's a lot of people who leave here, but I stayed put. Another gentleman on the label, Alan Swoop, he's from Akron. Mm-hmm. So there's some great things that come out of Ohio. I mean, shout out to Akron. There's LeBron James, right? Like, these are amazing, stories to tell. So I stayed put, but I worked outside of the city as well. So Yavis Ellis, street pastor, he's a good example of somebody who has worked the ground here, and I did that with him as well. But opportunities arose to kind of work outside of the city while staying here. I mean, it's 2014. We can record entire albums without leaving our backyard. And that's how We Live as Kings was. All of it was mobile. And I think the success started to just push right back here without me having to move. So at least not yet. So it's been a fun journey, like actually, building relationships outside of the city while still staying here because I believe in the city. So.
And how would you describe your album?
So School of Roses is a very emotional album. I really wanted to play with human emotion. So for instance, there's a song in there called After All, where it's super quirky, super poppy, almost like an Elton John, old school type happy song. And it's about being disappointed. So I wanted to make like just juxtaposition songs that just play with your emotions to get people excited about feeling disappointed or I know, right? Like, why? Because we need to embrace it, like, as human beings. Things happen, and we need to be okay with the fact that it happens, especially Christians, right? Like, I made a song called Wanna, just highlighting temptation and how people feel like Christians feel like we're invincible. So I'm like, no, I'm at shows, I'm seeing pretty girls, and I want to holler at them. They're like, but aren't you married? Yeah, but can't you say the same thing about yourself? Like, and if it's not that, isn't it something else? And I just wanted to play with those emotions, not to sit down and wallow in the fact that we deal with that sort of thing, but to just kind of like clear the air on us being superheroes or something like that. So the album is full of those emotional journeys, and you find that throughout the entire project. School, us learning, roses, relationships, and the beauty of relationships. So it was just my creative take on trying to make a great album that expresses stuff that we need to hear every day.
Now, why did you decide to do an R&B album? I know that you did Christian music before, right? I mean, not to say R&B isn't Christian, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Why did you decide to go for R&B?
Well, this is it's a relationship album, so I talk a lot about relationships, and it's very very human. So sometimes in mainstream Christian music, like they don't consider it a Christian music package from a content standpoint, unless I'm constantly saying Jesus or constantly quoting scriptures, or if it's not what they consider like worship songs. And so this one was not as overt. I like to use an example like C.S. Lewis, like when he did Chronicles of Narnia. Like there's a lot of Christian undertones to those movies, but they fit in a mainstream category because they're not necessarily trying to force a message. So that was from content. Musically, you don't see much of a market for R&B style music in the Christian genres. You know, contemporary Christian music, you've got your Mercy Me's and Casting Crowns and Hillsongs. There's nothing in there that sounds like, you know, John Legend or Frank Ocean. So then the only other alternative is CHH, which is Christian hip hop, and there's not a lot of singing there. There's not a lot of, you know, soulful. So there was really no genre for it. So I was like, when you listen to it, it has definitely an R&B soul feel, and we were like, let's go there and see how it works.
So that wasn't a struggle for you to decide? Like, did you feel like, oh, people are gonna be mad that I didn't go the Jesus route?
I thought about that, but it's not even not a Christian album. That's the crazy thing. Like, there's certain things that, you know, for me, like people who don't necessarily have a relationship with God, they'll be able to relate to it up to a certain point, and then like I'm starting to introduce like Christian principles that you can only really understand if you have a relationship with God. So
now, did you have an issue where you thought about, okay, I'm not going to say Jesus on this album?
that actually didn't happen intentionally. Somebody actually hit me up on Twitter today, and they were upset. They're like, I don't understand how you can make a whole album and not say Jesus. Like, what are you doing? And I replied to them. I said, well, the book of Esther doesn't mention God at all.
That's true.
And that's in the Bible. And then I also said, thank you for buying the album. And I said,
and listening for the word Jesus.
Yeah. And then I said, you know, there's some interviews out there where I walk through the entire album song by song and explain what each one means. Anyone who wants to know, like, there's an explanation behind the process. I just didn't force it. I think that this album was crafted effortlessly from the standpoint of it's written from a place where I was and, you know, still am. So I didn't have to try to strategize too much on the content. And then I worked with a team of people who are just smart enough to know how to achieve it. Because I think we really want to affect a mainstream audience. That's the other part to it. So
do you consider yourself a rapper who sings or a singer who raps?
I wish I had much more of a clever answer, but it's both. Like, I'm literally like a 100% singer and a 100% rapper. So if I'm around, like, you know, like a Kendrick Lamar or a Jay-Z song, like I want a pen so I can write some bars. You know, and singers are like, bars, what it look like? Yeah, you know, you hang out over here and all the MCs stand up and we can, I love the freestyle, like I love to spit. Like if this was a rap album that I put out, I wouldn't be wearing a blazer and a hoodie, you know, maybe I'll get a few henna tattoos and start rapping right now, and 6 gold chains. But then from a singing standpoint, like I pay attention to, they're both totally different. So I love them separately, but I love them the same.
And you're doing both in this album, but mostly you sing. So why did you decide to go that route?
I just think there's a level of appeal that singing has. As much as a lot of people love hip hop, like it will never be pop. It'll never be country. There's a different, you know, people love singing. So, I mean, you can have, at the height of rap, I think, to this day, is probably Jay-Z. I mean, people say Tupac, people say Biggie, that's fine. Much respect. But they'll never be Michael Jackson. You know what I mean? Like, it's an entirely different playing field. So I knew if we were gonna try to strike a mass audience, then we should probably explore the singer and Christon Gray, and then sprinkle a few bars here and there. So,
do you have a favorite moment of your career so far?
Yesterday, when the album came out. That was my favorite moment, to see everything I've done. I mean, I'm 27, so essentially it took me 27 years to write this album, and to see 27 years equate to #1 on the charts, and for moments right now where I can actually say that I have the top album out in the world, it helps me realize I'm not crazy. Everybody has their own School of Roses.
After the interview, a live show.
Still don't see the worth that you see in me, but you will trade the world just to be with me. Now my hands are waiting just to touch your face, as the distance between us disappears. In the final hour, I'm in search for time, just to capture this moment of forever. 1,000 words later, the picture is worth so much more. And I love that I just can't explain myself.
For CW Columbus, I'm Alissa Henry.